So have you ever picked up an ancient text, maybe even the Old Testament, and just felt lost? Like you're missing a huge piece of the puzzle? Well, today we're going to talk about a tool that can totally change that. It all comes down to one simple idea: knowing the rules of the game before you even start reading.
All right, think about it this way. When you grab a newspaper, or, scroll through your news app, do you read the comics section the same way you read a front-page headline? No way, right? You automatically switch your brain into a different mode. You know one is meant to make you laugh, and the other is reporting facts. They just operate by a completely different set of rules.
And guess what? That little mental gear shift you do without even thinking about it, that's it. That's what scholars call genre criticism. See, you're already an expert. And believe it or not, this one skill is probably the most important key we have for unlocking what's really going on in ancient texts like the Old Testament.
Okay, so let's dive in. We're going to take this thing we already do every day and see just how powerful it is when we apply it to the Bible.
So, what even is genre? It's really just a fancy French word that means kind or type. That's it. And getting the genre right is all about setting the right expectations. It helps us avoid, huge misunderstandings. I mean, imagine trying to play cricket using the rules of baseball. It would be a complete disaster, right? You'd be totally confused and probably pretty frustrated. It's the same thing with reading.
I really love these two ways of thinking about it. You can see genre as a kind of literary game. The author and you, the reader, have to agree on the rules to play properly. Or you could think of it as a literary contract, an unspoken agreement about how this piece of writing is going to work. But here's the bottom line. In both cases, if you don't know the rules or the terms of the contract, you're going to misinterpret the message. Simple as that.
Okay, so let's get practical. How does this actually work? We're going to start with a really beautiful, but also often really misunderstood genre: biblical poetry.
Okay, so the first rule of the game for Hebrew poetry is this thing called parallelism. Just look at this verse. See how the second line isn't just saying the exact same thing as the first? It's not a simple repetition. It actually expands on the first line. It deepens it, kind of rhymes the idea. Knowledge of the Holy One gives us a richer, fuller picture of what the fear of the Lord actually means. They work together.
And the second big feature, metaphor. This is where poetry gets its power, right? It's a comparison between two things you wouldn't normally put together. And in this case, we have a righteous person being compared to this strong, healthy, flourishing tree. So why a tree? This is what's so brilliant about it. A metaphor isn't just giving you a fact. It's an invitation. It makes you do the work. It forces you to ask, okay, what's the connection here? And your mind just starts firing. You think of stability, deep roots, life, providing for others, fruitfulness. You start to feel the meaning, not just read it. A simple statement like, a righteous person does well, just doesn't hit the same way, does it? All right, let's switch gears to a genre that, let's be honest, can feel pretty weird and distant for a lot of us today: ancient law.
Now, the number one most important thing to get right here is the context. This stuff isn't just a random list of do's and don'ts. It was never meant to be a universal legal code for every person for all time. Think of it more as the terms of a relationship. These were specific instructions God gave to His people, Israel, after He'd already rescued them. It was about how to live in this new special relationship with Him. And inside that big framework, you basically find two main kinds of law. First, you've got what scholars call casuistic law. A better name is just case law. It's always in that if this happens, then you do this format. But then you also have apodictic law. These are the big, straightforward commands. Think, you shall not murder. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just a direct command.
So the big question is, how on earth do we apply a law like that today without totally messing it up? Well, there's a pretty clear process. Step 1, what did the law actually say? Don't harvest the edges of your field. Okay. Step 2, what was the point back then? Well, this was basically ancient Israel's welfare system for the poor. It's how they took care of people. Step 3, what's the timeless principle behind it? It's pretty clear. Care for the needy in your community. And finally, step 4, we have to ask, what does that principle look like for us right now? Maybe it looks like supporting a local food pantry or other community programs.
And for our last one, we are tackling a biggie. This is probably one of the most exciting, but also one of the most misunderstood and misused genres in the entire Bible. We're talking about prophecy.
Okay, when you hear the word prophecy, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's predicting the future, right? Like a fortune teller. But that's a huge misunderstanding of the biblical genre. The vast majority of prophecy isn't foretelling the future, it's forthtelling.
It's all about speaking a powerful, urgent message from God to the people right in the middle of whatever crisis they were facing then.
And that leads to this huge shift in perspective. A prophet wasn't really a crystal ball gazer. It's way more accurate to think of them as a covenant enforcer. Remember that literary contract we talked about? The prophets were the ones God sent to wave that contract in the people's faces and say, hey, remember this? These are the rules of the game you agreed to play, and here are the consequences if you keep breaking them.
So here's the takeaway. When you crack open a book like Isaiah or Jeremiah, you have to remember the rules. The message was first and foremost for them in their day. It's packed with their history and uses incredibly powerful symbolic language. It is absolutely not a secret codebook for figuring out 21st century politics. Trying to read it that way? Yeah, that's like showing up to a cricket match with a baseball bat. You're playing the wrong game.
Look, at the end of the day, this whole genre thing isn't about being a scholar or memorizing a bunch of fancy terms. It's really about humility. It's about having enough respect for an ancient text to let it set the terms, to play by its rules, instead of trying to force our own rules onto it. It's just about getting started on the right foot. So, let me leave you with this question. What might you discover if you started playing by the text's own rules instead of yours?